General Paul Hellyer, former Minister of Defense of Canada, and he believes that life forms from space exist and are present on Earth. It's great to have you with us on our show. Why do you say that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying over our heads?
Well, because I know that they are. They've been, as a matter of fact, they've been visiting our planet for thousands of years. And one of the cases that would interest you most, if you give me 2 or 3 minutes to answer, is during the Cold War, 1961, there were about 50 UFOs in formation flying south from Russia to across Europe. And the Supreme Allied Commander was very concerned and about ready to press the panic button when they turned around and went back over the North Pole. So they decided to do an investigation, and they investigated for 3 years, and they decided that with absolute certainty that 4 different species at least, had been visiting this planet for thousands of years. So that's, we have a long history of UFOs, and of course there's been a lot more activity in the last few decades since we invented the atomic bomb, and they're very concerned about that and the fact that we might use it again. And because the whole cosmos is a unity, and it affects not just us but other people in the cosmos, they're very much afraid that we might be stupid enough to start using atomic weapons again, and this would be very bad for us and for them as well. The first question you have to ask is, how many species are there? And I used to think there were, between 2 and 12. And Apollo astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who came to Toronto a few years ago and had dinner with us, agreed there was somewhere between 2 and 12. But the latest reports that I've been getting from various sources are that there are about 80 different species. And some of them look just like us, and they could walk down the street and you wouldn't know if you ran, walked past one. And they're what we call the Nordic blondes, and also the tall whites, who were actually working with the United States Air Force in Nevada. They're able to get away with that. They had a couple of their ladies dressed as nuns went into Las Vegas to shop, and they weren't detected. And I have a friend who saw one of the men walking along the street, and somebody who would recognize that they were different, and he did. So there are those kind, and then there are the short grays, as they're called, and they're the ones that you see in most of the cartoons. They have very, very slim arms and legs, and they're very short, just a little over 5 feet, and they have a great big torso and a great big head and great big brown eyes. But they're different species, so you have to know that they're different species, and and know that they're all different. They are here among us, and I'm not afraid, because in most cases, well, as far as technology is concerned, they're light years ahead of us, and we have learned a lot of things from them. A lot of the things that we use today, we got from them. Lead lights and microchips and Kevlar vests and all sorts of things that we got from their technology, and we could get a lot more too, especially in the fields of medicine and agriculture, if we would go about it peacefully. But I think maybe some of our people are more interested in getting their military technology, and I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong-headed, and that's one of the things that we're going to have to change, because we're going to have to work together.
Talking about
all of us, everywhere on the planet.
You've mentioned military technology and swapping technologies and barters between aliens and people in American government. I want to ask you, as a former Minister of Defense of Canada, is interstellar war a possibility? Should we be creating a Star Wars force to defend ourselves from possible invasion or something like that?
Well, I think it's a possibility, but it's a possibility especially if we shoot down every UFO that comes in our airspace without asking who they are or what they want. And right from the beginning, we started scrambling planes and trying to shoot them down, but their technology was superior enough that we weren't able to get away with it. Certainly not for a long while. And during that period of time, they could have taken us over without any trouble if they'd wanted to. So I think we have to, rather than develop our own Star Wars, for Earth Star Wars, to protect ourselves against them, that we should work with the benign species, who are the vast majority, and work together and rely largely on them, of course, and cooperate so that we would be contributing something at the same time. But I don't think there's any point in us developing a galactic force that would tempt us to go out on our own and get into mischief, which is one of the things I think some of them are concerned about.
But what do you expect to happen if people start to believe in alien existence on Earth? Because things are definitely going to change. Our lives aren't going to be the same anymore.
Well, I hope that's the case. I hope that's the case, and I'm all for full disclosure, and I'm going to push very hard for full disclosure in the book I'm writing, and to give some reasons for it, things that we really have to know and have a right to know, and that our future as a species, and here I mean, you know, all of the species in the world, are potentially at risk if we don't figure out what's going on and work together to try and make life more amenable for all of us.
Describe what they look like.
I could, but it would probably take a whole lot of time. The reason I state that, when I got out in 1989, we had cataloged 57 different species. You have individuals that look very much like you and myself that could walk among us and you wouldn't even notice the difference, except for some of the things that they might be able to go ahead, even in a dark room, and touch an object and go ahead and identify what color that object might be. They would have a heightened sense of smell, sight, hearing. The situation is that you have various types of what we normally call grays. We didn't call them grays in the military, but you had at least 3 types of the grays. You had some that were much taller than we were. The unique thing that I'd like to point out for the most part is that the entities that we did catalog were in fact humanoid. Now this created a situation where the scientific community was trying to figure out why that would be the case, because you would expect that if life evolved on other planets that they would take on some type of other being, so to speak, not necessarily look humanoid or be bipedal such as we are. But apparently we got quite a few of the species out there that are humanoid in appearance. And that creates a question that yet has to be answered by science.
We've got, you know, documented 23 different types of extraterrestrials, most of them being good people, okay? But then we've got these massive capability with facilities of the Draco extraterrestrial side that, you know, they're controlling. And they don't just control this planet, we're just one of their planets that they control.
Is Mars under their rule or not? Because I know we have bases on Mars.
Yeah, and we are being used, we have been being used, and I hate to say this, but we're just a laboratory for them. Stop and think, that's not your moon, this is not your planet, and they own the planet, and we are their lab. We're their laboratory, and they're associates laboratories, other extraterrestrials coming in, doing their agenda.
Yes.
And
and this has been going on for eons, and we know about this, but I have to say, there is a reason for all of this, and I want to get to this idea that the Nordics are coming here. Mark said the same thing to me. Around the same time you're releasing this, he was saying to me on my one-on-one interview with him in prison. I go to interview him in prison. I've done it 5 times now. And he said, the Nordics want the humans to come up to speed militarily and in terms of consciousness, etc., so that they can join the fight against the reptilians and Dracos that are basically plundering the galaxies, taking over planets, etc. And you've said something very similar to that.
yeah, I have to agree with that. I'm just saying that this is our situation, and it's.
And our military is very aware of this, and so what they've been doing is funneling what we call black project money, billions, into building this secret space program that's now practically what we call a rogue civilization. It's almost living so far in advance of the way we live in terms of technology and in terms of everything else.
Okay, adding to that, you have Solar Warden. People don't believe that we have Solar Warden, okay?
I believe it, yeah.
Okay, but it is 8 Navy space battle groups with destroyers, cruisers, other vehicles, support vehicles, transports, trucks, all kinds of stuff. The public needs to know about this. The country needs to know about it. The planet needs to know about what has taken place. And we've been lied to. I say this over and over. We've all been lied to for a minimum of 6,000 years. Every country, every European country, every Asian country.
Hi, my name's Emery Smith. I'm 46 years old. I was in the United States Air Force for 5.5 years, active duty, and reserve for 2 years and inactive for another 2 years. And in and out of different types of projects as a civilian after that because of my clearance and because of the job I held with them and other corporations that were funded by the government. I joined the military when I was 18 years old. I was in auxiliary of the Air Force when I was 13, and also was in Army ROTC before that. I was in the military for about 5.5 years active duty. I did another 2.5 years of reserve, and then another 2 years of inactive. And that's kind of how I got started with the United States Air Force, and also these compartmentalized projects, moonlighting in the evenings while being active duty and working for these underground labs that were owned by major corporations that were renting and leasing places on the base to do this type of work. And a lot of these were, of course, underground facilities. It was mostly tissue specimen examination and dissecting and taking parts of specimens. And I've done over 3,000 different specimens, not whole bodies, but you know, just different parts of body tissues and whatnot to send for testing. They were testing everything. I wasn't really allowed to, in the early years, know anything about what I was dissecting. All I know is I had to go in there, take this part of this tissue, or dissect this nerve, or take this blood sample from this this specimen, and then send it away for testing. The technology I witnessed in the programs that were suppressive, that were suppressed still to this day, are things like anti-gravity, zero-point energy, a lot of 3D holographic imaging. Of course, there's a lot of devices that were reverse engineered by these corporations from government-retrieved downcraft and extraterrestrial DNA along with hybrid DNA from these specimens that they use to make pharmaceuticals and to make cures with and things like that. So there's always a positive and negative. They might make a gun with one thing, but the same device is used to kill cancer, on a different wavelength, but the same technology. So these things are all suppressed. So we don't have to live like we do now. We could actually have a lot of abundance as far as medical technologies, the cures for diseases, the abundance of water and food for everyone, and housing if these technologies were released. And of course, energy, free energy for everyone, and for all of our devices. So we wouldn't have to rely on gas, coal, and oil. I witnessed many different craft in these projects. I was actually working with the bodies and the craft because they're connected. A lot of the craft are organic material consciousness-assisted technology, which means only the driver or that race can actually operate the vehicle due to the frequency of the genetic DNA and the frequency that they're emitting. It's kind of like having a pet or a car that only responds to the owner. And these types of vehicles are so amazing. They're usually made in space through harmonics and frequency. So they can actually give life to a craft and infuse it with artificial intelligence or consciousness or both, and match it to the driver or the occupants of this vehicle. Overnight, if we were able to get all these technologies together and give them to the public, it would end gas, coal, and oil, because they prove ETs exist. First thing the scientists are going to say, well, how did they get here? They didn't get here in rocket fuel coming from a million light years away. So how did they do it? Well, they're making their own energy. Okay, they're getting the energy from the vacuum of space. It's unlimited energy. It's right here, right now. I could just open it, grab it, and use it with the right technology. That technology being released also affects everything that we do here, such as getting water from the atmosphere, just making it, appearing in your glass, purified water. So things like that, which, we talk about water and food. Well, there's a lot of countries, believe it or not, on the planet that don't have a lot of fresh water and food. Just look at India, okay? All their wells are completely destroyed from lead and arsenic. It's 2.5 billion people over there. It's like a third of the planet, and just in India. So these people, really need some clean water out there because the ground's completely destroyed. So the technologies that come with this could clean that up. It could clean up the big mess that's in the Pacific Ocean, all that garbage floating around miles and miles and miles. Fukushima, radiation, this type of technology can also clean that up within a couple of days, and transmute all that negative energy and all that trash. Cancers, disease, all that stuff could be, cured in just a couple of days with a couple of treatments using frequency and light from some of these projects. So life would be a lot easier if we didn't have to work so much to pay our gas, coal, and oil bills, and focus our energies in things we'd like to do, and also expand our consciousness. The people that are keeping these technologies from us are referred to as the Cabal, Majestic 12, the 300 major corporations that run the planet. So these are some of the pop culture terms that people use, to define, well, who's actually, making me, pay taxes, and who's making me, pay my electric bill, and this gas keeps going up and down, and the pricing and prices and stuff of all these negative things that we really don't need. I mean, look at us now. We're still Elon Musk and SpaceX and NASA is still using rocket-propelled technology that was probably invented by the Chinese on the first bottle rocket firework. So, I mean, we're talking hundreds of years of the same thing, just trying to improve it, make it better, when there's already anti-grav there. But they only use it not for the public. They use it behind the scenes for the secret space programs to, advance these secret space programs and keep it from the people of Earth, and keep us stunted down here like slaves. How is humanity going to expose these criminals? And the answer for that is very simple. Humanity won't have to. Gaia, planet Earth, will do it for us. It's going to be a collective of many people from around the world that whistleblowers and just people of the light that are going to come forward and share information and put their foot down when things are going to get rough, and keep standing back up after they get hit down, and keep moving forward, because that's the most important thing. And that's how, you know, everyone becomes a hero, when people speak out and support people that are speaking out for the world. And once this, you know, polar cap melts on both sides a little bit more, and all these civilizations start showing up out of nowhere, you know, the government's going to have to, and the religious community is going to have to answer to these new findings. You know, they're going to have to answer to the stuff that they found underneath the ice in Antarctica. They're going to have to answer to the city that they found under the Giza pyramids. They're going to have to answer to all these amazing things, you know, Atlantis, you know, off the coast of Cuba. And, you know, here it is, these amazing stories, but the media and everything just keeps it hush-hush here. In other countries, it's kind of a little bit easier to talk about these things, and the media kind of now and then reports on it. And then it gets kind of, you know, quieted down. And that's because the media is controlled by the cabal. So once that is severed too, you know, that's going to help humanity feel safer to step forward and to talk, you know, and more whistleblowers will come out. But the government, you know, for the most part, and the military, the U.S. government and U.S. military, are sick of what's going on. You know, 90% of them are just tired of it. And, you know, they have families and they're sick too. And, you know, a lot of these things are happening with a lot of extortion, a lot of, you know, mind control devices are being implemented in, you know, making people do crazy things. So this is bad, because then it makes it feel like our leaders are not competent. So there's a lot of this going on right now to manipulate us as the normal people down here, you know, separated from political and corporations. And we're just like, what is going on? We have the cures, we have the energy systems, we have all this, you know, but it's not being implemented, it's being hidden, suppressed. I've had many memorable extraterrestrial experiences, too many to count. And there are a few that did stick out, you know, that stuck out in my memories, that stay with me for a long time. And one of them was a visitation from some tall whites in a craft. And it was one of the first times I was actually physically next to these beings and was able to communicate telepathically and get downloaded a lot of information that was needed for me to disembark on this journey, which helped me tremendously. As far as the projects, it was always fascinating every year as you get higher security clearances to also see technologies and extraterrestrials working with humans that were actually was against their will at one time, and then seeing them, you know, becoming a family and being happy that they're helping us because they feel really sad for us. So I think some of the things of working hand in hand with extraterrestrials in these underground laboratories and whatnot, and being part of these projects and seeing that, wow, they're kind of just like us. They're just a little bit more civilized and mature. And it was a really big gift for me because I picked up on a lot with their energy and a lot of their teachings and educational scientific stuff, which I was just fascinated with. And it was very addictive for me to go to work because I just wanted to know more and more. And where's this going? And why doesn't anyone know about this? And, you know, it was later on that I figured, man, if this stuff got out, you know, what a blessing it would be to change the world and, you know, to help all the animals of the world and clean all the oceans and, you know, to cure my family of cancer and all these things was just flying through my head. So I think, you know, to answer that question, it was just working hand in hand with these extraterrestrials. It was a blessing. And also, you know, having special moments where you actually get to communicate with an extraterrestrial now and then to upgrade you and to also learn different sciences that didn't exist here on planet Earth.
Robert Dean has a list of credentials a mile long. He served 4 years from 1963 to 1967 at Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers, Europe, the military arm of NATO. He was an intelligence analyst with a cosmic top-secret clearance.
Well, Don, it began for me in 1963 when I was assigned to the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers in Europe. I arrived in the summer of '63 and I was assigned to the Operations Division. I was further assigned to what we call SHOC, the War Room, the Supreme Headquarters Operations Center. And at that time I was given a cosmic top secret clearance, which was and still is the highest level of security access that NATO has. When I was assigned to the War Room, I learned that a study had been initiated in 1961, and everybody was talking about it. They were gossiping about it. And the subject was UFOs, and that intrigued me a bit. When that study was concluded in 1964, and it was published, and I was still working in the War Room at that time, I had access to this document. I had a chance to read it. And having been exposed to it, I must tell you honestly that my life has never ever quite been the same. Because I read first-hand reports, verifiable NATO military material that indicated that the UFOs were not only real, that they represented something far beyond anything I had ever imagined before. When the study was concluded in '64, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant or in an airplane or in a theater, and you'd never know. And that particular point bothered the military guys a lot. The point being that some of these people from somewhere could be walking up and down the corridors of SHAPE headquarters, or they could be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon. One day at lunch, a lieutenant colonel made the remark, he says, "Jesus, do you realize they could even be in the White House?" And there was a little forced laughter at that point, I remember, because a lot of us over the years have had some misgivings about the occupants of the White House. But the point I'm making is that the idea that aliens could be here in our midst bothered the military, because if you're not paranoid when you go into the service, you're certainly trained very quickly to be so. It's the nature of the military mind, I think, to be paranoid. But that was only part of the story. The SHAPE conclusions in '64 were that there were 4 groups that we knew of. They were apparently interplanetary. Some very likely were interstellar. They even concluded that some of them could be intergalactic. When I retired in 1976, many of our military people knew at that point that we were not simply dealing with visitations from people from other planets or star systems. They had concluded by '76 that some of these visitors very well might be multidimensional in their source. The evidence that we had collected and the evidence that they had repeatedly demonstrated to us, and that's no accident. It became very clear after a time that there was a program or a process of some kind underway, that they had demonstrated over and over and over again that they apparently were able to manipulate matter and time. Now this really shook up our scientists. There are a lot of new young scientists in particle physics today who talk about multiple dimensions. There's a brilliant young professor in New York by the name of Michio Kaku, who has written a brilliant book called Hyperspace, where they talk about 10 separate dimensions. I'm not enough of a physicist to try to explain to you what a dimension is, but the idea that there could be intelligences from somewhere else, from other dimensions, coming and going into our reality. It's been quite a shakeup in traditional science. I guess I speak out openly and bluntly about this because I feel so strongly about it. I violate my security oath every time I speak about it. I do it intentionally and I do it on purpose, because I feel so strongly that the American people not only have a right to know the truth, but they have a need to know the truth. The truth, Don, apparently is simply this, that we're not alone, we've never been alone. We are apparently part of an infinite universe filled with intelligent life. I find that exciting. It doesn't frighten me. The shape study concluded in '64 that if they, whoever they were malevolent or hostile, that they could have taken this planet and cleaned it up and eliminated us, turned us into dog food or whatever, a long, long time ago. That the historical evidence indicates that they've been with us a long time, and I've concluded that we had what I like to call an intimate interrelationship with at least one of those groups, the group that looks exactly like we do. And that point is, I don't like the word alien. I don't think the term alien is appropriate at all here. I like to refer to them as family. We're related to them. I think they had a hand in our being here. And I think the time has come where we're about to meet our extended family. It's going to be very soon, and the people are not ready. And one of the reasons I do speak out so bluntly and so openly is if in some small way I can help people get prepared for this. Because I believe that this reality, once we have accepted it and understood it and gone beyond the fear, will bring about an expansion of consciousness in the human race that will truly help us and prepare us to go out there and take our rightful place in that infinite community of life.
My name is Boyd Bushman. I'm a senior scientist from Lockheed Martin. Approximately 13 years ago, I ran across a person who had been given a job by Dr. Teller. Dr. Teller was Oppenheimer's right-hand man, and even after Oppenheimer was thrown out of Area 51, Dr. Teller stayed there and was in charge of several programs. The person that I contact twice to 3 times per month is the head of that program now. And they continually update me on everything they possibly can. I do have a top secret clearance. I choose, however, for their purposes, not to use it because they, the intelligent ones of me, actually believe that a great deal of information should be lifted up from those dark recesses of Area 51 and moved over so people can see it. So that's what began about 13 years ago. Since I am a scientist, I do not believe in theory. I basically say, follow the data, theory be damned. If something can't verify by a physical test that something is true, then I do not care to accept it in that I present. Therefore, everything that we present here will be data that comes directly from them through me to you. Now see, the only reason that I bought everything that he said is because my people have been feeding me for 13 years pictures, not only pictures of just plain pictures, but I gave them assignments, being a senior scientist, and they got a picture of up close and personal. This is a UFO which is ready to take off, and it is very up close. And they inform me that there are 3 elements which the UFO is contained. One is telluride, the other is germanium, the other is palladium. I did not say a metal once. And not only that, but the things pick up and fly using anti-gravity. Now, that's one picture. Here's another picture. In this case, the UFO is not turned on, ready to fly. Therefore, it only shows on the upper part of it. And generally, it's white on the underside when power is applied. Here's also another of the same order. Now, these UFOs are 38 feet in diameter, and it was rather surprising to me, since I actually physically gave them my camera. They took this picture as a UFO was departing. Within one flick of my camera, they got 3 UFOs. That's real. And yeah, we don't know why either. Now also, when UFOs come in, they like we have a heads-up display for our pilots. They do too. This is what their pilots see in order to tell them how to come to Area 51 and land. And not only that, they can go to a vertical hole in a mountain over 51 and go down a shaft. They don't have wheels. They don't have anything like that. They take off by going up straight, and then not only that, but they travel extremely rapidly. I asked them to tell me about who was flying these things. He therefore said, fine, they're approximately 5 feet, 4.5 to 5 feet tall. They had one or two of them around it that were 230 years old, and we have a total of at least 18 that exist and operate with our facility as Teller set it up. Now notice the eyes are different, nose are different, but they do have 5 fingers, 5 toes, 2 eyes, and rather strangely enough, I asked him how they communicate. He says, well, it's like this, boy. You all of a sudden have a question in your mind. You walk into a room with one of them, and all of a sudden you find yourself giving the answer to your question in your own voice. They're able to use your own voice by telepathy to talk to you. And I said, fine. Now that's how they look front. But when you turn around and look at the back, it's like that. Now notice that they have 3 backbones. They're actually cartilage. Nevertheless, it's a much more efficient system as ours. They also have 3 ribs in their system rather than more. This is also the back side of an alien. Here's a 45-degree look. And here's the back of the head. Notice the veins, no hair. And now when we talk about aliens, I pushed the issue, and he said, well, there's kind of 2 groups of aliens. Well, they divide them into 2 groups. One group he calls, it's like you have a ranch. And you have a ranch and you find that one group are your wranglers that know how to wrangle your cattle. There are others are rustlers, ones that steal your cattle. And indeed, that the two groups do act differently. To the ones that are wranglers are much more friendly and have a better relationship with us. Here's the other side of the alien too. Now also notice that their feet, where they have 5 toes, the toes are joined together like a frog, and yet they are dissimilar. And this is the home planet that they come from, which they call Quintonia. Now notice that the hand, that's an alien hand. Notice that that the fingers are longer than ours by quite a bit, about 30% longer, and that's just the way they're put together.
I'm Phil Schneider. I spent 17 years in black budget programs, government geologist, as engineer, structural engineer with aerospace applications, self-taught metallurgist, became kind of famous in my own right. The military's known about the alien question for the better part of 70 years, and they first saw their glimpse of what was going on as early as 1909 in the American Southwest. Army cavalry evidently were chasing some bandits, and they entered this cave. They were holed up in a cave, and what they found in there was flying discs and little gray guys and all kinds of weird things, and they didn't know how to explain that, and they wrote them down as best they could, and it's been in secret archives ever since. That's up down by the Truth or Consequences area of New Mexico. Well, the alien thing is more than just what I'd call a non-visible threat. We on the surface, first of all information dealing with alien or alien reproduced technology or alien reproduced vehicles or any other kinds of things, well hidden from the American public. Our black budget, for instance, garners $1.023 trillion every 2 years. It's over $500 billion a year. Right now, there are 131 active deep underground military bases in the United States. There's 1,477 of them worldwide. Each one has an average cost of $17 to $19 billion. Each one is built in the site, it used to be, it'd take a year to 2 years to build each one, and now they're capable of building a couple of them a year with sophisticated methods. My colleague Al Bielek has actually been on some of the high-speed railways, the magneto-leviton trains that connect all the deep underground military bases within the United States. He's been on a Mach 2 train and floats off of a single rail at 3/4 of an inch off the rail, and is what you'd call high tech. We have nothing like this on the surface. The public basically has been totally lied to. We're considered stupid or even moronic in some cases. It's got to stop. If we're going to gain our country back, we must, and I repeat, must instill in our public officials, anybody that goes and does public service, they must tell us the truth. And if they cannot do this, then they must be impeached, or they must be removed from office. Here's a crystalline example. It's in the scalenohedral crystalline form. We got this from the large grays technology. This is grown in the confines of outer space, which has not quite a super vacuum, but by the way, this is capable of withstanding temperatures in excess of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's great for certain parts of aircraft. This kind of material I work with on a daily basis. I have a picture of one of the aliens been working for the United States Pentagon for the last 58 years. His name is Val Valiant 4. He's right here. There's my father in the background. This whole place, the ready room of the USS Eldridge, Al Bielek has probably explained, or maybe even shown you this picture. There's a list of some of the notable people in it. They're all the atomic bomb scientists of the day, all the time variant experimentalists of the day, all the top physicists of that particular day. This was in August of 1943. Now this guy has not changed one iota in 58 years. Started work, he came here, crashed here or whatever, whether he's under duress or not. He started work for our U.S. Navy and military operations in 1937, either 37 or 38 is what I've been told. So it's for 58 years, this man's been employed, probably under duress. If you don't do as we say, we're just going to use you for alien bait or something, I don't know. But anyway, he basically hasn't changed. He lives for 490 years, is what he says his lifespan is. Now, he's supposedly a semi-benevolent, he's a human-looking type person. He has 6 fingers and 6 toes, and he's got one oversized heart, one lung, giant lung. His blood vessels are bigger. He's got copper oxide for blood, similar to an octopus. His brain capacity 300 centimeters greater than ours. He has a thinking capacity, IQ, if you were to measure it, be totally off the scale, be about a 1200 IQ. He speaks 100 languages fluently, alien as well as others. He's a remarkable person. I had a chance to meet him one time.